You're listening to the Mind Your Autistic Brain podcast, the show for late identified autistics. Each week, you will hear the autism journey of another late identified person, including their hardest part, their best part, and insights they share just for you. So you know you are not alone on this journey, my friend. Find your person and community here each week. And don't miss the special editions of Creator Spotlight and Hot Topic with your hostess with the mostest, Social Autie. That's me, Carole Jean. Let's get started. Welcome to Mind Your Autistic Brain, the show for late identified autistics. And my Hot Topic special guest is my friend Evaleen Wheldon from AUsome Training. Evaleen, I am so excited you are here. This is something that we have been trying to coordinate and schedule for the last couple of months because you are super busy and have some amazing things happening with AUsome Training. And for those of you who are on Instagram, you can follow and check out Evaleen at AUsome Training. And she has some incredible resources, some fantastic things. And if you guys have been listening for a while, if you've been following the podcast and you follow me on IG and any of the lives that I do, you've heard me mention my friend Evaleen and how things are sometimes just human. They're not autistic. They're not neurotypical versus neurodiverse. It's just human. This is my friend Evaleen. Evaleen, welcome.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks for that lovely introduction. I'm so glad we got around to doing this now.
I know. And she and I are both super excited because this is like the first sunny, warm, beautiful day in both of our countries. And she's in Ireland and I'm of course, in the States in Kentucky. And we've both had like overcast and rainy. So we're super excited. So this isn't going to be a really long episode, guys, because we want to go outside and have some fun. But we are going to talk about some really great information and some good hot topic things today. And one of those things that we're going to talk about is how things kind of happen in our world, how we might sometimes be manipulated or not get things. And all of a sudden we're in situations or things have happened and we're just like, what happened? How did we get here? So to kind of get to know Evaleen a little bit, Evaleen, would you share with us your autism story? Just sort of, how did you find out? How old were you? How did you come to the knowledge that I am autistic?
Yeah, sure. It's 7 years ago. I was 37. And people always ask, what led you to be diagnosed? And I'm like, well, the 37 years that went before that. So it's quite a long story. But it was around the time my little girl was 1. I found being pregnant difficult. As in medically, I was fine. I was in great health. Glowing, as people say. But it was, I think a lot of things that had happened in my life were coming back to me, which is actually, I think this happens with a lot of pregnant women, that any trauma we've had, it kind of comes, because I suppose you're in your kind of nesting stage or a mothering stage or protective stage, and, all this stuff that you haven't dealt with comes back. So a lot of that was going on for me. I obviously related to that. Then it was like, whoa, sensory intrusions, let's call them. My husband chewing gum. It's like, stop chewing gum.
That's an executionable offense.
Oh, totally. We're lucky we're still together. But it was, there was just a lot of stuff that it kind of reminded me of being like a teenager. It just had a lot of the same feelings, a lot of the same, stuff going on. That's kind of how I felt. And I suppose about a year later then, I suppose I had looked up autism before that, but I don't know, you're getting this list of stuff for 5-year-old boys and you're like, no, that's not really me, or I don't actually have these things. No, and then I started researching more and more, and I can't even remember what I searched, but I, came across autistic women and stories, and I was like, oh, there I am, that's me. Like all of these things apply to me. And then I went for a diagnosis, but it was, I think that was the start of the journey, because since then it's just been massive learning curve for me, and meeting other autistic people I find that the diagnosis was a bit meaningless, kind of, it's like, okay, so you have this thing and it's like, yeah, everything makes sense, but it still didn't fit for me, as in I didn't understand. I was like, well, what does this actually mean? And it was through meeting other autistic people and reading what autistic people were saying and whatever, going to watching videos and just kind of tuning into the autistic perspective that really, really made that connection more for me, any more than a, kind of an identification or a diagnosis does. It was more about actually, what does all this theory mean? What does, how does it apply to me and as a living, breathing autistic person? And since I got to know the autistic community, I think that's where my own personal growth has come in much more, reconnecting with myself, and realizing how much I was masking, and that's probably why when, I think when I was pregnant and even when my little girl was 1, it was, a baby, and it was just this ridiculous pressure that I was putting on myself. Like, everything had to be perfect. Obviously my anxiety went up to here, and then how do you mask that? It was like, cracks have to show somewhere. But it was, again, like how, having her dressed perfectly all the time, having everything ironed, little baby clothes that don't wrinkle anyway. Now I look back going, what was I doing with my time? But, I work for myself. I went back to work, a few months after she was born. It was like, again, you're in the thing. So it's you don't realize it till afterwards. And I suppose, it was like I felt like I didn't have a choice. And part of that was all mixed up in, this invincible mask that, like, well, I can do everything. I'm Superwoman. There's nothing I can't do. And you're trying to keep up that persona. And obviously you can't, because you're a human and it's impossible to do everything, like a superhuman when you're just human. So, I suppose that's it. That's probably a little bit about my journey. I suppose finding my voice, because a lot of people are like, oh, you're very confident, oh, you whatever. And I'm like, yes, this is new. This is like, literally, I have only been me for the past 3 years, probably, maybe a little bit more than that, because
I love that.
Yeah, but it is new, and it's like I've been basically repressing myself for.
I'm being repressed for all of you Monty Python fans out there.
Like, I've got to make up for a lot of lost time. I have a lot of stuff to say. So,
and you and I had sort of touched on this the last time we talked, which, God, I love when you and I get to talk because it's always so fun. But that was something that, you and I had both talked about, was that you go for decades and you're so busy masking and you're conforming to what you think this standard is, and you're killing yourself trying to live up to this completely unrealistic standard that you think you're supposed to be doing because you think everybody else is doing it.
Yeah.
And, because we do tend to have these, black and white, you tell me this, I'm going to believe you, kind of thing.
Yeah.
We hear somebody say, oh, well, this is what you're supposed to do. And we're like, okay, well, that's what you're supposed to do. But really, that's not what other people do. And we're killing ourselves trying to do it.
Yeah.
And it's like, it is sort of this rebirth in a lot of ways. I call it, you get this clean slate and now you're autistic, and you come to the table with this whole new knowledge. You process your whole life up to this point, and then you're like, okay, now what?
Mm-hmm.
Who am I
Yeah.
underneath all of this? How do I clean all this muck off? And then it's like you emerge as this whole new being, because I'm the same. I'm not the same person that I was, at 39 when I found out. And ooh, you mentioned in the sensory things during pregnancy. Oh yeah, but I had no clue that's what it was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, me neither. Yeah.
So now that you're, and I love this because you're like, now that I found my voice, I used to not say anything. Now I'm saying stuff. So tell me, share with us a little bit about sort of you finding your voice right now, what that is, and what that feels like, and what that means to you, Evaleen.
Yeah. It was just a huge transformation. Probably if someone sees me speaking now or saying, or, advocating, is probably like, whoa, but there were times when I just, in a normal conversation with someone, wouldn't say my opinion. I wouldn't voice I would just be analyzing what they were saying and kind of go, what's the best response to this now? What will I say to this? And it kind of became automatic nearly, but after so long years of doing it. But, there was times where I it's kind of like just not, the only way I can describe it is like feeling small, feeling insignificant. And I think there was always this fear that somebody would see that inner self or that real me or that person who I had like wrapped up and protected from a young age and built this fortress around or this mask around. A lot of it's based on fear. And I think for me, it was, just kind of like a really big realization or awakening or whatever word you want to put on it. But, it happened quite suddenly. About 3 years ago, I suppose it was kind of listening to what people were saying about us, and because that's why it's confusing, because you have these like well-meaning people, like I was at a conference, an autism conference kind of thing, and it was 3 days. So I had 3 days of someone talking the talk and saying how much they valued neurodiversity, and on the one hand, but then like words like, oh, they almost look normal slipped out in another, it was, so there was this so my head was going, yeah, this is fine, this makes sense, this person sounds like they're pro-autistic, but my gut was just going crazy. And I think for me it was like, what's this feeling, why am I, and just to make sense of that. And now I know I had totally disconnected from that inner self or that gut feeling. And it was just like literally my eyes opened. I just was like, whoa, hang on. This is what society has been doing to me since I was a kid. This is what society does to autistics. And it was just like, looking at, instead of kind of the medical model or, this is what's wrong with you, just kind of going, wait a minute, this is like oppression. This is like literally people pleasing, grooming people to just please other people so they're not weirded out or whatever, because they don't, they're not prepared to accept something that's a bit different. So it was like literally just, bursting out of a shell. And I think it took me time to figure stuff out. I had set up my page, which was Awesome Cork back then, because I didn't think I'd be reaching all or, everywhere, but now we are. So it's Awesome Training. But I set up that page, primarily to educate people on the autistic perspective. So it was really where I found my voice, and it was really where I started to articulate thoughts and where I was figuring things out. And I might be thinking about, I don't know, something to do with like sensory things or whatever was going on in my head at the time, and I'd write it on the page, and people would reply, and it was a really good way of connecting with other people, but also of getting my voice out there. I was like terrified of conflict most of my life, and then suddenly I'm like arguing, kind of, it's like, whoa, actually, what?
You're like, bring it on, baby.
But
I've got something to say. I've got 40-something years of something to say. Come on.
It is. It's like, actually, there's nothing wrong with debating stuff. I've left a debate because I prefer, hang on, I never thought of it like that. And it's, it made me think about something in a new way. But like, I would have been terrified before, because not because I didn't know what to say, but because I'd be so terrified of confronting somebody or whatever, that because I would want them to like me, or accept, what will this person think of me if I say this? And if that thought's in your head all the time, it just totally stops you from actually getting your needs met and saying, this isn't okay, or I would prefer if it was like this. Because I was just so afraid of what that reaction might be, even though I didn't really want to have a friendship or relationship. You know what I mean? If that makes sense, with the person.
Oh, boy, do I. And I think everybody listening and everybody watching just went, I so get that. I'm right there with you. Because that really is. That's one of the biggest things, one of the biggest hurdles that had been stopping me, was that I was afraid. I was afraid of everything. I didn't want any conflict. I wanted everything to be smooth. I didn't want somebody to not like me or somebody to say something that would hurt my feelings, because that happens. And all of a sudden I was just like, why am I holding on to this? Because it's not serving me. And that was the big question. Is this serving me? And is it true? It's like, A, it's not serving me, and B, it's not true. And really, does that person that I really don't know and I don't have a relationship with, does their opinion of me really matter in the big scheme of things or in my everyday world? No. So if I disagree with them and I don't like what they have to say, I've got some choices. I can choose to either bypass it and keep going, or I can step back, and from a place of kindness and gentleness and patience and some understanding, I would then say, hey, I see that you said this or you believe this, and I could see your perspective on that. I see where you're coming from, but I'd like to share how I see it and then just put that out there and just, where they go with it from there, that's
Mhm.
their choice. But at least I've then spoken up. But that was a really big thing was like you finding my voice and not being afraid to say something no matter what the situation because I couldn't live in fear. Living in fear had made me miserable. It had made me not me. It had made me like this person who didn't want to take up any space in the world.
Yeah.
And now I'm just like, whoo, baby, I'm big and I'm here.
Yeah, but when you give those signals to someone, when you're like afraid of your, to take up space, people sense that, and then they just walk all over you. It's like literally. So it's not only do you just not confront people, you're literally just like a doormat, and this is what happens, and it's like, oh, why didn't I just say this thing? And I think for me as well, it was kind of looking around at other people and saying, well, that person is like saying what they think. Well, that person's saying what they think. What's wrong with me saying what I think? Again, if someone has an issue with it, that's their issue. They need to evaluate why they have an issue with it. They need to do a bit of self-searching or whatever, because I think that was it. I think like I took on the responsibility. If someone, was offended, it's like, that's my fault. But like, I've said things that shouldn't be offensive to people. Do you know what I mean? Or like are actually defending other people, and someone's like, "Oh, that's very offensive."
Oh,
That's
okay,
terrible.
Evaleen, I want to like stop and park on that for a second because what you just said is brilliant insight and it is incredible information for somebody else out there. And what you just said is so important is that we take on and tend to, when we're not aware of it, take on the responsibility of other people's responses and emotions. And that is not our responsibility.
No,
That's huge.
huge.
That's a
Yeah.
huge thing. And that was a big one for me. And I love that it was a big one for you.
And it's kind of like you have these realizations, but then something happens that your confidence builds. It's a process. It's like I go through days where I'm like, am I actually making sense? Am I doing? Will I go do something else? It's like totally self-doubting because of years of self-doubting. But it's even if I'm training, if I was mentioning something like ABA, I used to be like, oh no, like this is terrible. Now I have to tell these people. It's nothing to do with me. Again, I felt responsible in somehow that these people had been led to believe that I'm like, I'm just saying this is what it is. This is the thing. It's not actually my responsibility, everything that's gone on before. But I think that's part of part of the whole masking and fear that we have actually taken on the responsibility of stuff that's not ours. And I have to remind myself like daily, that's really not mine. That's their stuff to deal with.
I'm so glad it's not just me. It's still that daily reminder because I don't know about you, but for me, it's been now I know that I'm autistic. And that has been an incredible life-changing awareness about myself. And it's that tip of the pyramid in those hierarchy of needs is that self-actualization. And it's like I was living in the dark and I had no clue and I was so lost and I knew I was lost, but I didn't know how to find myself. And it's like that little key, that little piece of information that, hey, you're autistic. And then to understand what that means for me.
Yeah.
Not what it means for anybody else in the world, but really going through the process of what does being autistic mean in my life and mean to me, because everyone's experience is different. Yes, we have things that are relatable, and yes, we have things that we can share in some common experiences, and that is huge. Like getting into the community and talking to other women, talking to other autistics, and finding out that, oh, wow, you experience that too? It's not just me, and I've been keeping it to myself because I was so terrified that I was so broken somehow, because that's how I experience the world, or that, oh, it's hard for you too. It's not just me, and it's not that everybody else makes it look easy. It's that it is hard. That was like a relief, right?
but that's huge. You know, I mean, that's all any of us as humans need, is to just know that we're not alone, that we're not the only, because that's kind of what it felt like, you know, that I'm the only one like this. There's something wrong with me. Everyone else is fine. And you grow up thinking that you're the only one, and to finally actually get to adulthood and go, oh, I'm not the only one. There's like loads of us. You know, there's huge connection in that. There's just huge healing in that as well, I think. You know, it's I mean, that's one of the things, was just actually I stopped berating myself, stopped like beating myself with a stick. You know, I couldn't have a conversation with somebody without walking away and going, why did you say that? No, you said that wrong. The next time now, like, just ridiculous. You know, I mean, when I think back now, it was so harmful. It was like this negative talk all of the time, and just really giving myself a hard time needlessly. And, you know, this kind of thinking that everybody, you know, had this negative view of me, which isn't true either. You know, I'm sure some people did, some people don't, you know, same with
It
now.
is so not true, because I am like, I am the head fan club member of the Love Evaleen Club.
Oh, thank you. You know, but it's like, yeah, I just there's huge freedom. I think that for me, that's what it is. It's just like a new freedom. I'm free to be myself, to, you know, set my boundaries in place, not afraid, not living in fear of, if I say this, what will be the reaction? Because you know what, actually, the reaction is okay. The reaction is someone usually respecting you because you've said, this is not okay with me, you know, or, you know, whatever you're saying. But the reaction actually has been quite positive. You know, I'm sure there's lots of people who don't like stuff I'm saying, but then that's for them to deal with.
That's on them. That's their responsibility. So, Evaleen, I want to ask a question to kind of maybe help our viewers and our community in Mind Your Autistic Brain, because this is something I went through as well. And it's venturing out, putting your toe in the water of letting that fear go, speaking what's on your heart, what's on your mind, and then allowing the other people the opportunity to respond in their way. So as you were going through this, what are some things, or how did you begin to do this? Like, looking back on it, because retrospect in 2020, as we know, is our teacher in our lessons. So when you look back on that, in that earlier self of you venturing out into taking these chances and these opportunities and really embracing the freedom of letting yourself show, how did that start to get you to where you are now? What are some insights that you have on that?
Oh, okay. Okay. Also, I don't want to make it sound really easy. I was terrified. Most of the time.
So true. It is scary because it's different.
I'm like,
we haven't done it.
You know, as if I'm like, that's not what I'm, you know, in the beginning, obviously there's still all of that stuff we're hanging on to, like that fear of, oh no, what will people think? Am I saying the wrong thing? You know, and kind of seeing what way it's responding to. So for me, it was, you know, I suppose it was doing it I did it quite publicly on a, you know, Facebook page. Here's me, here I am, you know, and there are parts, because obviously it is a new voice and it's really fragile, and it's quite still open to criticism, you know, or sensitive to criticism. So, you know, and particularly I was just coming out going, yeah, this stuff they're saying about this isn't true. This is, you know, and I really was just saying what I needed to say. And I got mixed reactions from people. And I suppose it's probably taken me time to just kind of, okay, separate this. And, you know, I came to the conclusion that if I put up like, I love pink fluffy bunnies or white fluffy bunnies, somebody's going to have something negative to say about that. That really, you know, it's like, it doesn't, you know, it doesn't matter what you say. If you say, I'm going to give everybody €1 million, you know, euro or $1 million today, someone will be saying, oh, you're showing off your privilege. Or somebody will be saying, why didn't you give it to us before? You know, there's just going to be, I don't have millions to give anybody, by the way, just in case anyone's getting excited.
Well, dang, I was kind of hoping on this end.
I would love to. But, you know, it's like, it's just that there's just going to be people who are going to have, you know, are in a different place too, or whatever. I I found it hard. I did find it hard. And I probably didn't look after myself initially. Like now I will take breaks, and yeah, that's so important. And I suppose, now I know more about trauma, and I'm like, oh, half of that stuff I was doing is a trauma response still. It's like we're still fighting. And that's kind of how I was, that was, so my reaction to kind of waking up and realizing was like, whoa, I got to fight this. So now I'm still just in a trauma response. It's just different to fawning and freezing. Now I'm fighting. And I suppose it was very much emotion, driven. I probably didn't think about it enough. I just went and did it because but also it felt right. And you know what? It helped me enormously. But if I was, to do it again, I would be like, okay, get someone else to help you. Don't do it all on your own.
I love it.
Have a proper support network. Like I am very lucky. Like I have a few very good friends in the autistic community who have supported me. I had people who kind of were friends, but then weren't there when I actually needed support. So I think it is actually that's all of us need support. So it's like having the right support in place. Definitely, taking breaks from it. That's just something I've literally only started doing probably this year, because I was like, what am I doing? Like if I woke up every morning and had an argument with my husband before my day started, I wouldn't have a very good day. And that's what I was doing. It was like literally, kind of arguing and trying to, explain things to people. And that's really hard to do online because there's no tone in the text. People are imagining, like I literally write what I'm saying and then people will go, someone might, I've had it happen where someone's gone, I can't believe you said, and I'm like, that is totally just like, I'm not saying that. Like, how is someone seeing that I'm saying that?
Yes, that's a challenge.
Yeah, so it's kind of, and it's learning. It's just, what, I can't argue with everybody who's going to try and correct my language and tell me I should be saying I'm with autism and not with autistic. And it was getting frustrating because I'm like, I actually can't just have this conversation every day. So it's, I think, picking your challenges or picking your arguments. But yeah, I've been like terrified. I've put up stuff like I am challenging what the norm, what people have been thinking. Like, as you said, like autistics are human. It's like, well, if we start thinking about that, what do we discover? And it's like, we discover everything and now everything makes more sense. And, some people genuinely have a problem starting at that point because of all of the medical stuff and all of this, what's been said about us before. And even autistic people have an issue, kind of starting at that point. But we are human, so we have to look at how we react to everything and how people respond to us. And we can't say that oh, all of these things are because we're autistic, just because we experience them. Why are autistic people anxious? Why are autistic people why have we a ridiculously high rate of suicide? Why have we unemployment? Is that because of autism? It's like what's because of the way we're treated, and what is. And then for me, it was literally just trying to pull apart all of that stuff, and the more I did, the more I saw just trauma. Like literally the common denominator in most things is trauma,
Absolutely. And I think that that was one of the things that really drew me to you and to your account, because we met on IG, was that you look at things and you start to pull apart, well, let's step back and really look at this. You're like, let's challenge this because it's a broken model. And what I really like, and sort of where I've taken it sort of for myself on this one, because I think you're so brilliant in how you propose this and how you present it, is that when we are an us against them mentality in everything, and it's like, well, this is autistic and this is neurotypical, and you do this, you're pitting one against another, and you're not finding the commonality, which is the human basis of our existence. And we all experience certain things, yes, and there is a difference, correct, but when we step back and say, okay, well, what's just a human thing? And what is falsely being represented in both the autistic community and within the neurotypical community, and what's true and what's not. And how do we come to a better understanding and close that gap?
Yeah.
Because when we have this chasm and we have this gap, we are not a rising tide raising all ships. We are creating a void that is not serving either group when we do that. And I love that you do that. And one of the things for all of you Mind Your Autistic Brain members, in last month's The Brain Dump, the very first newsletter that went out, Evaleen's gorgeous, fantastic, and really fun article about lining things up was featured. So if you haven't gotten that, you're more than welcome to go click on the link and get the newsletter. So you can take a look at that. And I'll include it in the show notes below so people can access that. Because I love that. You're like, why are you saying that autistic people specifically like to line stuff up?
Yeah.
Because, well, let's think about it. Go to the grocery store. Everything on the shelf is lined up. You park your car. Your cars are all lined up in a nice little neat row. It is not an autistic specific thing. It is a human thing to want to organize and line things up.
Yeah. Like starting with autistics are human it's really fun because you actually just go, this is ridiculous. Like it's so ridiculous. You have autism experts telling us that we have special interests. So you have autism experts saying these children are obsessed with this topic or they'll only talk about it. And you're like, but you're the autism expert who's worked on just autism for the past 30 years. And you were thinking,
right. Like, it's insane. It is insane.
But it's that lack of self-reflection. It's like, do people, that's the thing. I've spent all my life thinking about what I'm saying. And I'm like, do people actually think about what they're saying? Because it's just like, they're literally just saying stuff that applies to them as well. It is nuts. And like, I do explain non-autistic and autistic differences sometimes, but also I'm like, I feel like I'm othering ourselves, and it's kind of like, I know we kind of have to talk about our autistic stuff because we are just finding our community and our identity. And there's there's that struggle. But I'm kind of going, but I'm making, sometimes I'm making us sound like we're really different. And I think, autistics are like explaining all of this really cool human stuff, which I think is fascinating as well. It's like stimming, for example, it's like people, and yeah, autistic stim. But guess what? All human beings stim. And it's like, now you've got autistics explaining stimming to the rest of the world. Like, you're like, well, we're not like, we haven't studied all the, science and all the biology and all of this stuff that goes with understanding stimming. And yet we can explain it to people, who have missed out on all of this stuff for like a century. So yeah, I do. I think explaining stuff as autistic things, as if they're specific to us, can other us needlessly sometimes. And I mean, I think it's only something I realized recently. It's like, well, actually, when I'm teaching people or training people, I use my empathy, the way, and I suppose that is something that autistics, we do have a lot of empathy. And I know this is for me and common to other people as well. It's like, if someone is telling me a situation or they're upset about something, I might say, that's like the time when I blah, 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 blah. So I'm trying to relate exactly to how that person's feeling. And, this is quite normal for me. So when I start training other people, it's quite normal for me to give them examples in their lives. If I'm explaining, like maybe, a heightened response to sensory input, I'll say, well, if you're experiencing a day or maybe a week where, someone you love's in the hospital, maybe you're waiting on bad news, your head's not in the game for the day because you're distracted, you're waiting for the phone to ring, so your anxiety's here, and the phone rings, you're going to jump. You're going to have like a physical response that you wouldn't have on a day where none of that stuff's going on and your phone just rings and you're like, hello. That's, the relationship between our emotional state and our sensory processing. And obviously the two go together. You can't separate emotional from sensory as well. It's like, I don't know why we're talking about sensory stuff without going sensory emotional. It's like, they're not separate things, but it people get it. It's like, oh yeah, because I experienced that too. And we're like, yeah. Did you ever, like eat some sand and it didn't taste nice in your mouth or feel good? That's what vegetables are like for me. It's like, oh, yeah, there's nothing strange. There's nothing, I don't have difficulty processing anything. That's just my experience of eating the thing. It's like you eating sand. Oh, okay. So why would you send your kid to therapy to teach them how to eat sand? I wouldn't. Exactly. So let's move on now and talk about stuff that's actually helpful. But that's, it is using empathy, and it has to, to teach other people, because it has to start with we're all human beings. We're not that different. We are more sensitive. We communicate in different ways, but we're not like, over here, like some different, I don't know, species altogether. Well, I suppose there are a lot of people who think we might be, but as well, there's lots of theories about that.
The alien race.
But, I just think we're the sensitive people in the world, who have been unfortunately like really, really misunderstood. And I think the world needs us because we need sensitivity. We need more sensitive people, in the world, I think. So,
I definitely agree with you on that one. So as we're wrapping up, one of the questions I ask all my guests is if you have one thing that you would really love to share with the person next to you who's just starting their autism journey today, what is it that you would like them to know?
Oh, that's a hard one. Like, I have to think about that. So what would I tell someone who's just kind of finding out or discovering or thinking about the fact that they're autistic? I would say congratulations, probably.
Oh, definitely. We have a quarterly celebration in Mind Your Autistic Brain for this exact reason. There's not enough celebrating.
Yeah, there's not. I think congratulations for making it this far, for putting up with all the crap you have. And congratulations for, starting this new period of your life and just enjoy that journey of connecting and like, don't be afraid, because I think sometimes we're afraid, well, whoa, what's underneath this mask? What's underneath all of this stuff? What will I find? But you know what? It's something beautiful because you've spent your lifetime protecting it and it's worth reconnecting to it. So I think that's probably what I would say today. Anyway, I could change my mind tomorrow.
Oh, you need to definitely keep that one. And I'm so glad we have it recorded for the sake of this because, Evaleen, that is beautiful. That is so important because you've spent your lifetime protecting it. It is worthy and it is beautiful. And what will emerge is so worth the journey. If you would like to know more about my beautiful, wonderful, deeply insightful, and fearlessly fighting friend, Evaleen Wheldon, please go check her and her beautiful class and her courses on AUsome training. She has a video on her site that's about a green stop sign, and I want to put a link down below so people can check that out because I think it's such a great insight to sort of help share, and it's a good one for people to share with their family members as you're going through the uncovering process of what autism means to you. This helps explain it, and Evaleen does it in such a wonderful way. Evaleen, what do you have available and coming up with AUsome training that people can check out?
Sure. So at the moment we have a series of webinars that we did last year. So they're all recorded, available on the website. Lots of mental health stuff. So like particularly for adults who have spent our lifetime masking. So we talked about anxiety, autism and anxiety. And then we also did like social anxiety and masking because we talk about anxiety, but like social anxiety is another part of that. We have a webinar on EDS actually, which is Ehlers-Danlos syndrome, trying to raise awareness on that because we're 7 times more likely to have EDS than the general population. So there's, we've got one on stimming. I did a wonderful webinar with Kieran Rose called What Autism Is and Isn't. So again, it's unpacking all of this stuff and going, right, this is what it means to be autistic at the end of the day. Here's what it is. So we've lots of different things like that. I have 2 of my own courses, which one is like the social skills. Well, I'll say social skills, but it means communication, not teaching anyone to mask. But it's that's the Get Connected course. That's there. I have another course, which is understanding behavior. So it like literally looks at, why is someone doing this? And it starts again with, you're human, we're human. Why would a human being do this? And it really just kind of breaks all of that down for people. We have a parents conference live on Sunday. And what else have we coming up? We've got a live event on PDA in May. And I have something exciting coming in the 1st of April.
Do share. This is airing in April.
It fits in with our congratulations theme, let's say. Have that starting in April. I am also doing like a YouTube series on awesome women. So I'm chatting to awesome women. Hopefully, Carole, I'll be able to return the favor and we can have a chat on awesome women soon.
Oh, so awesome. And is the name of the channel on YouTube AUsome Training as well?
Yeah.
Oh, fantastic. Well, I'll make sure I put a link down there because
Perfect.
everybody's checking that one out for sure.
Yeah, we only have 2 so far. I did one today, but I haven't edited it yet. So yeah, it's just, again, you know what? It's like, autistic women, we exist. Let's talk about our stuff, things we need to talk about. And I think it will help other women who might be thinking that they're autistic as well or starting their journey. Yeah, that's it. I have my books as well, social skills books for kids. So I've got yes, I do have lots of stuff going on. I know when I start talking, I'm like, okay, I do have a lot of stuff.
I know, it's kind of like, whoa. And then it kind of goes back to that, you and I were talking about it before Christmas, and you're like, okay, well, I've been putting in some breaks for myself. And it's like, okay, I look back on it, I'm like, well, I started a group, I started a podcast, started a YouTube channel, started a blog, and all this stuff. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I've gone for 14 months straight and I hadn't had a break. So last week I'm like, okay, it is time for a creative rest sabbatical. And I just dropped off the face of the earth for 9 days.
And don't you feel so much better when you
Oh
come
my
back from the
goodness.
break?
Yes. Yes. And I'm actually doing a live on Friday to share with everybody what I learned in that
Fantastic.
creative rest sabbatical, because that's part of the burnout balance.
Yeah. Yeah, I find I took a break at Christmas in January. I was just like, whoa, like so much creativity, so much thinking, so much, and actually it's time for me to have a break again now. So I am actually taking a few days this week. It's Patrick's Day tomorrow.
Oh, that's right. Tomorrow. Yes, it is. All
Yeah.
coming up. Oh, it's wonderful. Evaleen, thank you so much for being here today. Thank you for making time to share your insights, your experiences, and your amazing insight to what autism is and what it isn't, and just being human.
Yeah. Just a way of being human. That's all it is. Thank you so much, Carole, for having me. I really enjoyed this. It was a